Have you heard the news? There is a great celestial storm approaching, the likes of which few alive have ever seen, and even less are prepared for. What storm, you might ask? And how do we prepare for it? Good question. Let me walk you through it. It all starts with a dragon, celestial dragon. On January 11th, roughly 2 weeks ago, as I film this and as we speak, the North Lunar Node passed from tropical Aries to tropical Pisces, otherwise known as the 0 point of the tropical zodiac. What is a node? The lunar node. In Vedic astrology, it's known as Rahu, or the head of the celestial dragon. In our birth charts, Rahu is always opposite Ketu, or the tail of the dragon. And they form what we might know as a karmic, underlying karmic path that we are on in this lifetime. The tail of the dragon is what we take in with us, what we've achieved in a past life, and what we're moving away from, what we're releasing. And Rahu is what we're heading towards. It's the destination of our journey. Almost acts like a tractor beam, sucking us towards it. It's also invisible. The dragon, the celestial dragon, is not a physical point in the chart. It's a hypothetical point. What it does is amplify. It channels energy towards a single spot in the sky clock. And right now, that spot, that point of attraction, is in Pisces. It's in Pisces whether you follow tropical or sidereal astrology. And I follow both. I think the only way we can properly understand the sky clock, the celestial energies and the archetypes, is by combining both of them. So right now the point of attraction is in Pisces. It's amplifying or increasing that energy, but not just Pisces. Because when Rahu, the head of the dragon, crossed the 0 point, the end and the start, what is released and then what is renewed, it met Neptune, currently at 28 degrees, in the final degrees of the sign that it is the modern ruler of, alongside Jupiter. So Neptune, as the modern ruler of Pisces, it's called the more subtle parts of Pisces. It is the artistry, the creativity, the mystic properties of Pisces, but also the part of it which is a bit elusive, a bit slippery, because Neptune is the god of the oceans after all. So what does it mean to have the head of the dragon and the god of the oceans being amplified, being increased, being made the point of attraction in the final degrees of tropical Pisces? Say, as a starting point, we're in peak Pisces, particularly as we enter February and then move beyond that. Approximately the first day of February, Rahu and Neptune will become exactly conjunct. So, we are entering peak Pisces. What does that mean? Let's look at the good first. We can find peace. We can heal. We can find faith, find compassion and empathy. We can dream and be inspired in ways we have never been before. Create amazing works of art, amazing works of fiction. Because if we spin that, if we look at the shadow of peak Pisces, it also brings out everything that isn't real. It can be deception, it can be lies, it can be delusions, also sickness and frailty, and madness. And when we hit March, we'll also be entering March Madness, because the Pisces energies really start to ramp up. If you think we're in peak Pisces now, just you wait and see. So 20th of February, the Sun, as it always does every year, will make its way from tropical Aquarius into Pisces. Rahu, Neptune, and now the Sun. And of course, where the Sun goes, Mercury and Venus are never far behind. So now, let's make that 5 necessary planets, because Rahu is not a planet, but 5 characters, 5 archetypal characters, all hovering in and around the final sign and not far away from that 0 point. So it's not too significant that we also have Mercury and Venus there. But what is significant, and what is perhaps a bit, we could say ominous, we could say foreboding, or we could say exciting, is what Mercury and Venus do over the next few months. So they won't just be in Pisces once, they'll be in Pisces twice. They will, throughout February and into March, travel through over the 0 point and into tropical Aries. But then, almost in unison, they'll stop, they'll station, and they'll go backwards into retrograde. Almost like they're being sucked back into a vortex, into a whirlpool. That resistance is futile. And so we have material things and Venusian things in our own life. We can think about, for Mercury, our intellect, our mental faculties, ability to speak, communicate. For Venus, it's more love, romance, relationships, sense of beauty. We feel passionate about what our desires are directed towards. In the collective, for Mercury, we might think of modes of information sharing, modes of travel, and modes of communication. Getting sucked back into this Piscean whirlpool, this cauldron of madness. Venus. What is Venus in a collective level? It's relations. Maybe international relations. It's also harmony and peace. All these qualities we might imagine being sucked back into this 0 point energy. Mercury gets sucked back into the last degrees of Pisces, basically into a conjunction back to Neptune. So we have Mercury and Neptune stuck for a good few weeks, basically at the final degree of the tropical zodiac, which many experts would argue is the most volatile part, not just of Pisces, the final sign, but of the entire zodiac. The point of ending, of release, of letting go of every archetypal experience that has been gathered on the journey through each of the 12 signs. Venus goes back a bit further. When it goes back, when it slows down, when it stops and gradually starts to go forward again, you'll spend almost a month hovering around our final character, our final Piscean personality of March Madness, Saturn, the greater malefic, the great adversary in the sky. The end of March until the end of April, Venus, everything that we consider good and lovely and pleasant and comfortable in the world, stuck with everything that challenges us and restricts us and tests us and puts this dampening, melancholic, distant energy into the world. So to see the picture we have going on here, there's one more factor we have to consider that really brings home the madness of March and the times that both precede and follow it. Rahu and Ketu, the head and the tail of the celestial dragon, also better known as the eclipse points. They show where the variable orbit of the moon, of course the moon goes up and down like that, doesn't pass stable, unlike the sun, which has a very stable ecliptic. And so we understand the nose of the moon as the point where the orbit of the moon intersects the orbit of the sun. And when it does that, it means that in a 3D world, they are able to overlap. And so when we see that in a 2D perspective, we get eclipses. We get the occultation of either of them. The occultation of the moon in a lunar eclipse, or of the sun in a solar eclipse. So when the sun comes into Pisces and gets close to Rahu, we're also in eclipse season. The most fated time of the year, where things happen that feel like they had no choice in happening. They were just meant to be, and they were always going to happen. The legacy that they leave is the most lasting. So in the midst of all this, in the midst of March Madness, on the 14th of March, we have a total lunar eclipse, otherwise known as a blood moon eclipse. So, what's going to happen? I'm not sure. Neptune will pass over the 0 point the last day of March to the first day of April. Saturn will pass over the 0 point the last day of April, first day of May. Do we go from Pisces madness into Aries war, fire and brimstone? Who knows? If we think of Saturn, we think of Neptune. On one hand, we have time, Kronos, the lord of time. On the other hand, we have the planet of transcendence, of religion, especially around this lunar eclipse, when the sun will be almost exactly conjunct Saturn. It should actually feel like the end times. Or at least we may be encouraged to think or believe that it is the end times. So how do we prepare? That's the big question. How do we survive the end times? How do we embody the higher manifestation of the Piscean archetype? How do we allow these intense emotional energies, these end times, biblical flavoured energies to wash over us, to not drag us down? How do we allow them to elevate us? How do they allow us to transcend the version of ourselves that we imagined, the version of collective reality that we imagined or were encouraged to imagine? How do we embody the highest ideal of Saturn, the great taskmaster, the examiner of humanity? How do we pass what could be humanity's greatest test? Who knows? Who knows what's coming? Who knows how literal this astrology may play out in the world? That sounds a bit intense. If you feel like you need a safe space, a comfort zone, a nurturing environment to navigate the storm, then you're in the right place. Firstly, I have my ascendant, my rising sign, the part of the sky that was rising over the eastern horizon when I was born at 26 degrees Pisces. So I feel like I'm real prepared. I feel like I even signed up for the character or the guide for this time to navigate the storm. But I also feel very much at home doing it on this channel, on Lugal's World. When this channel was born, when it was officially created, the moon, the most quickest moving of the luminaries, was a few degrees away at 28 degrees Pisces, which also happens to be exactly where Neptune and Rahu are right now. Funny that. Almost like this channel was created unwittingly, with no conscious intent to represent this nurturing space, because that is the moon. It is the maternal archetype, the nurturer, the comforter, that energy of the womb. So imagine this channel as your safe maternal space as the storm unfolds in whatever way it will, in whatever way it must, in whatever way it was fated. Because what comes after the storm? what is unstable, what is not built on solid foundations, what has served its purpose, is washed away. It can be traumatic, it can be devastating, but ultimately it is what allows what is new to grow, to take root, to come through, for transformation and renewal to occur. What happens then? Well, this channel, again, unbeknownst to its creator, was not just made for the storm, to lead us through whatever the aftermath of the storm awaits us. The sun, the solar archetype, the leader, the inspirer, the awakener, that stabilizing, consistent masculine energy, was on the day that this channel was created, exactly conjunct the fixed star Regulus, otherwise known as the heart of the lion. Regulus is the ruling star, symbolized as the throne, position of power, connected to ancestral energies, ancestral spirits. It calls on those spirits of what's come before it to exercise power in a just and righteous way, the way that the lion stands over and leads its pride. So you can see there, just through those two placements, and there's far more in the chart of Lugal as well to unpack, which we will do in the future, but for now let's just leave it at that. A moon created to nurture, to protect, to comfort during the storm, and then a sun to lead, to inspire, and to awaken as we move forward into whatever comes in its aftermath. So stay tuned. There's far more to come. I say far more than any of us, regardless of how Piscean we might be, could imagine or to dream.